time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely. Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is...
The envelope had remained hidden for months, sealed inside a private correspondence file that almost no one knew existed. But when Prince Harry's letter to Catherine finally surfaced, one sentence struck the monarchy with devastating force. "You were always the one they trusted." It was not merely an apology. It was an admission that Harry understood exactly why the family had turned toward Catherine, and why they had stopped turning toward him. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine held the transcript in a sitting room at Windsor, reading with the calm that had carried her through pressure. A restricted royal correspondence file was a protected collection of private letters kept away from palace circulation, and this document had been removed from that record. The meaning was immediate. Harry had written during a period when conversations with the royal family had become rare and dangerous, because one careless sentence could ignite a public crisis. Yet this was not an attack. It was something far more unsettling. Her expression changed when she reached the line again. Harry did not accuse her of stealing his place or turning the family against him. Through a documented private letter, he admitted that she had earned the confidence he once believed birth would secure forever. He described how voices tightened when he entered rooms, how family members measured every word around him, and how those people spoke freely when Catherine appeared. The confession cut deeper because it carried no anger. It carried recognition. William entered moments later and stopped when he saw the pages in her hands. The prince knew her silences, and this one told him she was shaken. Catherine did not pass him the transcript. She placed it beside her untouched tea, pressed one hand against the table, and quietly said, "He knew. All this time, he knew." William moved closer, but she asked for a moment. She could not yet tell whether the letter was remorse, surrender, or another weight Harry had placed in her care. Then she reached the final page. Harry referred to a royal gathering involving William, King Charles, and a decision he had never been allowed to influence. The king had made a choice in that room, but Harry remembered something more painful. Catherine had been trusted to speak when he had not. That memory, buried for years, was the reason the letter existed. But before Catherine could decide what Harry wanted from her, the letter forced everyone to confront the deeper question. How had she become the person the monarchy trusted when trust itself was collapsing? Harry's words carried such power because they touched the oldest wound inside the royal family, the difference between being loved and being trusted. He had once believed those things were inseparable. Catherine learned that they were not. William depended on her steadiness, Charles valued her discretion, and the late Queen recognized her patience. Harry, watching from the edge of that circle, slowly realized that affection could survive, while confidence disappeared. He had grown up believing that being the younger son guaranteed him a permanent emotional place beside William, even though the constitutional future, the line of duty and authority leading toward the throne, belonged to his brother. The prince would carry the crown's future, but Harry believed he would always carry part of William's private world. Catherine entered that world with no inherited position and no protection from royal blood. She had to earn every measure of confidence through restraint, consistency, and the ability to endure pressure without turning private pain into public conflict. William remembered how often she had defended Harry when arguments between the brothers became dangerous. She urged patience when anger threatened to harden into permanent resentment, reminding him that his brother's fury often concealed fear. Yet the letter revealed that her kindness eventually became painful to Harry. Every gentle word reminded him of the closeness he had lost with William, and of the family he could no longer approach without wondering whether every sentence was being judged. Catherine continued reading as the future king stood near the window, listening in silence. Through the documented letter, Harry admitted that senior royals had often asked her to interpret his moods when they no longer knew how to speak to him directly. She had become an unofficial bridge, carrying messages between people who loved one another but no longer trusted direct conversation. That role mattered because one wrong interpretation could deepen the split, while one moment of patience could still prevent another public rupture. Catherine finally understood that the confidence placed in her had never been a simple reward. It had been a burden. She had been expected to protect William from further hurt, reassure Charles when the king feared losing another connection with his son, and calm Harry before his anger became irreversible. William turned away when she reached the most vulnerable line. "You were the last person who still spoke to me as though I could come back." The words struck him because Harry had not described her as an enemy. He had described her as the final open door. Then Catherine found the passage that changed the meaning of everything. The decisive break had not begun with an interview, a memoir, or a departure. It had begun during a closed family discussion when Charles asked her a question Harry believed should have been asked of him. Yet the letter's tenderness concealed a sharper memory, because Harry had not chosen those words merely to revisit the past. He was pointing Catherine toward the precise moment the family's loyalties changed. The point of no return came during a private gathering at Sandringham, long before the final public rupture. No cameras recorded it. No statement acknowledged it. Yet Harry never forgot where everyone sat, who refused to meet his eyes, or the moment King Charles turned past his own son and asked Catherine what the family should do. In that single gesture, Harry understood that birth had given him a place, but trust had given her a voice. The emergency meeting had been called after Harry prepared to announce an independent overseas initiative using royal connections without full palace approval. Sandringham was one of the monarch's private estates, often used for family gatherings away from the formal machinery of the crown, and Charles had chosen it because he wanted the dispute contained before it became another institutional confrontation. William arrived, knowing one uncontrolled announcement could damage the family's public authority. Catherine understood that refusing Harry outright could deepen his resentment, while approving the plan without safeguards could expose every royal involved. Only a small number of staff remained nearby when the four of them sat down. Harry expected his father to challenge him directly. Instead, the king looked past him and asked Catherine, "Can this be repaired without damaging the family again?" Silence hardened around the table. She hesitated because any answer would place her between two brothers whose bond had already been weakened by suspicion. William watched her carefully, aware that one careless phrase could turn private frustration into permanent division. She finally said, "Harry's intentions should not be dismissed, but trust had to be rebuilt before independence could be granted under royal influence." Her voice remained gentle. Her meaning did not. Harry pushed his chair back and stared at Charles. "Why are you asking her what should happen to me?" Catherine lowered her eyes, while William moved one hand toward the papers, as though preparing for the argument to explode. The prince tried to explain that she had defended the idea more than anyone else in the room, but Harry heard only the conclusion. Her judgment was considered safer than his promise. The documented letter later admitted that she had spoken with care, yet pain had stripped every kindness from his memory. After the meeting, Harry saw William thanking Catherine in the corridor, while the king remained inside reviewing her proposed compromise. Charles had not rejected the plan completely. He was studying the conditions she believed could save it. But to Harry, that moment proved something colder. The monarchy had formed a circle of confidence, and he was standing outside it. His letter then revealed that he followed Catherine away from the room and confronted her privately. Their exchange ended with one sentence neither had repeated for years. That explosion did not come at the table, but it followed Catherine into the corridor, where Harry finally demanded to know whether she had become his defender or his judge. The corridor confrontation lasted only minutes, but it severed something that years of public controversy could never fully explain. Harry followed Catherine away from the meeting and closed the door behind them. There were no aides, no prepared statements, and no William to intervene. He asked whether she had ever truly stood with him. Catherine, wounded by the accusation, answered with the truth he was least prepared to hear. Harry entered the small private library, still carrying the anger of the Sandringham meeting. He believed her recommendation had given Charles and William the justification they needed to restrict his overseas initiative, but she understood this was no longer about one proposal. He was reacting to years of feeling managed, watched, and slowly excluded from decisions shaping his own future. A royal initiative was a project connected to the family's public influence, and using that influence independently could affect the credibility of everyone attached to the crown. That was why the dispute mattered. One promise made without approval could create another crisis, while one refusal could convince Harry that the family had already decided he could never be trusted again. He gripped the back of a chair, but refused to sit. Then he accused Catherine of earning confidence by remaining calm while he was punished for showing anger. He asked whether she had ever defended him when he was not in the room, or whether her kindness had only made his rejection easier to deliver. She removed her wedding ring, turned it once between her fingers, and placed it back before answering. Catherine told him she had defended him repeatedly. She had urged William to wait before closing doors, asked Charles to separate Harry's fear from his fury, and carried explanations between men who no longer knew how to speak without reopening old wounds. But she could not keep promising that private conversations would remain protected when he had begun treating confidentiality as another form of control. Harry's face tightened, yet she did not retreat. "Standing with you cannot mean standing against everyone whenever you feel abandoned," she said. The documented letter reproduced that sentence years later, proving he had never forgotten it. Catherine then delivered the truth that silenced him completely. William still loved his brother, but he no longer knew which version of their conversations would remain private, and which might one day return as accusation. Harry could challenge the rules, reject the restrictions, and condemn the palace machinery, but he could not dismiss the fear behind those words. Before leaving, he warned her that the family would use her loyalty until nothing personal remained. Catherine watched him go, not knowing that the warning would return when William discovered how much authority Harry's letter had placed in her hands. Years later, those words returned in Harry's own handwriting, but the letter did more than revisit an argument. It quietly gave Catherine control over what happened next. The most startling detail was not what Harry confessed, but what he asked Catherine to do. He did not address the request to Charles. He did not place it before palace lawyers. He did not even entrust it to William. Harry gave Catherine the authority to decide whether the letter would remain private, be shared with the family, or become part of the permanent royal record. The man who distrusted the institution had chosen its most trusted guardian. The final page stated that she alone should control how widely his words traveled, turning her into the custodian of his most vulnerable admission. A permanent royal record was the protected archive where private documents could be preserved for future family and historical understanding, and placing the letter there would shape how Harry's choices were interpreted long after the present conflict had passed. That was why the request carried such weight. It could influence future negotiations, define the family's memory of the rupture, and determine whether his confession remained an act of private remorse or became evidence in a larger royal reckoning. William reacted first. He told Catherine that she should not be forced to carry another responsibility created by his brother's decisions, especially after years of standing between them whenever anger threatened to become permanent. The prince wanted to protect her, but she refused to turn the document into a weapon or reject the burden simply because it was painful. She told him that Harry's request might be the first genuine act of trust he had offered the family in years. William did not agree immediately, yet he understood why she could not dismiss it. Charles read the letter next, and remained silent until the final page. The king removed his glasses, placed them carefully on the desk, and looked toward Catherine, while William waited for anger that never came. "He has placed the burden back where he believes mercy still exists," the monarch said. Then he asked why his son had trusted her with a decision he would not place before his father or brother. Catherine answered without defending Harry or excusing what he had done. She believed he had chosen her because she could recognize his pain and the damage he caused without pretending that one erased the other. That answer unsettled both men because it exposed the difference between sympathy and surrender. She would not absolve him, but she would not use his confession to humiliate him either. Then Catherine made her decision. Before choosing the letter's official fate, she would send Harry one private response with no secretary, lawyer, or communications advisor shaping her words. William warned that direct contact carried risk. Charles understood it carried even more hope. Catherine accepted the burden, but the moment she prepared to answer Harry, the letter's existence escaped the room, and the consequences began before reconciliation had any chance to breathe. By morning, the sentence was no longer confined to Windsor. It appeared in messages between journalists, in whispered calls between royal offices, and finally across a breaking television banner, "You were always the one they trusted." Harry had written the line as a confession to Catherine. The outside world transformed it into a verdict against him, a tribute to her, and a new weapon in the conflict he had hoped to soften. A partial transcript had reached the media before Catherine could send her private response, stripping away every passage of remorse and explanation surrounding the words. The sentence now stood alone, sharp enough to suggest surrender and incomplete enough to invite cruelty. Palace staff began tracing access to the correspondence file, the protected record containing sensitive family letters, while communications advisors argued over whether silence would preserve dignity or allow a distorted version of the truth to harden. The danger reached beyond embarrassment. If Harry believed his confession had been used against him, the fragile trust behind the letter could collapse before Catherine had answered it. Harry received the alert at home and read the headline twice. He lowered his phone, said nothing, and walked out without answering Meghan's immediate question. She followed him, but he could not explain what had happened without admitting how exposed he felt. His first response was not rage, it was humiliation. The most vulnerable sentence in his documented letter had become public property, and the world was treating his pain as proof that Catherine had defeated him. At Windsor, she saw the same banner and felt responsibility settle over her, even though she had authorized no release. Catherine feared that Harry would assume she had exposed his words to strengthen her own place inside the monarchy. William recognized the danger immediately. The prince demanded an internal review after learning that only a handful of people knew the letter had been resurfaced. He believed the timing was deliberate. Someone had released the central line just before Catherine could respond, perhaps hoping to destroy the very reconciliation she was trying to protect. Then Harry's encrypted message arrived. "Tell me this was not you." The accusation reduced years of loyalty, resentment, and unfinished grief to one devastating test. Catherine closed her eyes before typing 5 words, "Speak to me before deciding." William urged her to let palace staff manage the contact, but she refused. She would not defend herself through advisors or force Harry to interpret another carefully prepared statement. Catherine requested one private conversation and insisted that neither the future king nor any communications official attend. Harry read her reply in silence. Meghan asked whether he believed it. He admitted that he no longer knew. With the palace searching for a leak, and the world choosing sides, Catherine and Harry were left with one final chance to speak, without anyone else, defining what their words meant. For the first time in years, Harry and Catherine spoke without a prince, king, lawyer, or press advisor between them. There was no audience to impress, and no statement to prepare. Catherine did not ask him to withdraw the letter. Harry did not demand public vindication. Instead, two people who had once understood each other confronted the wreckage of trust, and discovered that honesty sounded different when neither was trying to win. They connected through a private video call arranged outside the usual palace communication structure, the official system used to record, protect, and coordinate sensitive royal contact. Catherine had promised the conversation would remain personal, and she kept William, Charles, and every advisor away from it. That mattered, because one additional voice could turn confession into negotiation, while one carefully prepared phrase could make Harry believe he was speaking to the institution rather than the woman he had trusted. Neither of them pretended the old relationship could simply return. Too much had been said, too much had been exposed, and too many private wounds had become public arguments. Their purpose was smaller but more honest: to discover whether any form of trust could survive. Harry apologized first. He admitted that accusing Catherine of leaking the letter had been unfair, but he also confessed that suspicion had become his instinct whenever private information escaped. She listened without interrupting, then told him that this instinct was exactly why reconciliation had repeatedly failed. He asked others to trust his intentions while assuming the worst of theirs. Harry looked away after those words. When he finally faced her again, Catherine said, "Trust does not return because we miss it. It returns when we stop punishing each other for being afraid." The sentence left him silent because it named the fear beneath years of anger. Through the private recorded account of their call, Harry then revealed why he had written the letter. His resentment had never come from believing Catherine was false. It came from realizing that she had become what he could no longer be for the family: a safe place for doubt, disagreement, and painful truth. She had not stolen his role. She had remained present while he moved further away. Catherine answered without triumph. She told him the complete document would be preserved in the private royal archive, a protected collection holding sensitive family records beyond public circulation. His full meaning, not only the leaked sentence, would remain part of the family history. Harry understood what she was offering: not rescue, but fairness. Then he agreed to one final act. He would issue a personal statement accepting responsibility for the letter and preventing the public from using it as an attack on Catherine, William, or Charles. Their conversation did not restore the family that once existed, but it changed the meaning of the letter just as the public prepared to deliver its own judgment. Outside the palace, one sentence became a national argument about duty, loyalty, and who had truly protected the crown during its most unstable years. Some saw Harry's words as surrender. Others heard grief. Catherine's supporters treated the letter as proof of her quiet authority, while Harry's defenders saw a man admitting that the institution trusted obedience more than pain. Then one newspaper front page transformed the debate into an image Britain could not ignore. Broadcasters described the letter as a rare acknowledgement that Catherine held a unique place of confidence beside William and Charles, not because she demanded influence, but because she had protected private tensions when the family was most divided. The crown meant the monarchy as an institution, including its public duties, authority, and continuity beyond any single royal figure. That distinction mattered because the argument was no longer only about one fractured relationship. It had become a public judgment on what kind of behavior the monarchy rewarded and what kind it feared. Palace officials released a restrained confirmation that private correspondence existed, but they refused to discuss its contents. Their silence shifted attention toward Harry's forthcoming personal statement and allowed the leaked sentence to dominate the morning coverage. Catherine watched with growing discomfort as commentators praised her by humiliating him. One presenter called Harry defeated. She immediately turned off the television. William reached toward the remote, but she stopped him and said, "He finally told the truth. They must not turn that truth into another punishment." The prince understood her concern. Admiration built upon his brother's shame could never become reconciliation. It would only give resentment a new shape. Harry faced the same distortion from the opposite side. He saw his confession reduced to surrender, yet resisted the urge to attack the press. Through a documented exchange with his communications advisor, he insisted that striking back would bury the accountability he had intended to express. Then the front page appeared. A photograph of Catherine walking alone filled most of the page beneath the headline, "The One They Trusted," while a smaller image of Harry sat beside the leaked quotation. The contrast turned private pain into a public contest, with a winner and a loser. At the gates of Kensington Palace, a small crowd gathered with handwritten messages. Kensington Palace was the royal residence and working base closely associated with William and Catherine. One card read, "Trust is earned quietly," capturing the public belief that her influence had been built through endurance rather than title. Yet she refused to celebrate. Harry's statement arrived that evening, and its final lines rejected the idea of victory. He explained that the letter had been written to acknowledge the person who carried responsibilities he had once misunderstood. When Harry's own words finally reached the public, the monarchy was no longer deciding who had won. It was confronting what trust had cost every person involved. Harry's final statement did not ask for sympathy, demand an apology, or accuse the palace of twisting his words. He confirmed that the letter was genuine and declared that Catherine had earned the family's confidence through years of loyalty, patience, and discretion. More importantly, he admitted that her trusted position was not the cause of his estrangement. It was the mirror that forced him to recognize how completely his own relationships had changed. Through the written public statement, Harry confirmed that he had addressed the letter to Catherine and that the central quotation reflected his private conclusion. He explained that trust inside a family could not be inherited through title alone. A working royal was a family member who carried official duties on behalf of the monarch, but even that position could not guarantee personal confidence. Trust survived through conduct, responsibility, and the protection of other people's vulnerabilities. That truth mattered because Harry had spent years believing the institution had chosen Catherine over him, when the deeper reality was that she had continued carrying burdens he no longer wished to hold. William read the statement beside her and felt relief collide with grief. His brother had finally acknowledged the damage, but the admission also confirmed how far apart they had become. The future king understood that recognition was not reunion. Catherine refused to treat the words as victory. She knew they had come from loss rather than submission, and accepting them with dignity was the only response worthy of the confidence Harry had described. Charles then ordered the complete letter preserved under restricted family access, meaning only approved relatives and archivists could examine it. The king wanted future generations to see the full reflection, not merely the sensational fragment that had escaped into the press. Catherine wrote one final note by hand. She told Harry that trust was not the same as agreement, and forgiveness was not the same as forgetting. But honesty had finally ended the cycle of accusation between them. She sealed the reply and placed it beside the original document. William asked whether she believed his brother would understand. "He already has," she answered. "That is why he wrote it." The letter did not restore Harry's former place beside William or return him to the working monarchy. It offered something more honest, an end to the claim that Catherine had stolen what belonged to him. She had carried responsibilities he abandoned, protected relationships he exposed, and remained steady when trust itself was breaking. Harry finally accepted that truth without blaming her. And so the letter entered the royal archive not as evidence of a victory, but as the final confession of a prince who understood too late that Catherine had never taken his family's trust. She had protected it when he no longer could. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.